Hey guys, tonight we're heading east and way back to a time of honor, strict codes, and enough sword swinging to make your modern back give up just from hearing about it. We're stepping into the sandals of a samurai, but before you picture yourself gracefully wielding a katana in the moonlight, I've got news. Living like a samurai? It's not all cherry blossoms and cool armor. In fact, you probably wouldn't last 24 hours. So before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe if you genuinely enjoy these strange little bedtime trips. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. We read every comment and always love seeing you night owls. All right, time to dim the lights low, get cozy, and let's drift off into 17th century Japan. Chapter 1. Congratulations, you've just woken up in feudal Japan. You're not a peasant, which is good, but you're not a shogun either, so don't get cocky. You're a samurai, sworn protector, servant to your lord, and depending on the era, part-time bureaucrat or full-time sword guy. You open your eyes on a tatami mat, which sounds relaxing until you realize your back is screaming, because this bed is basically a glorified straw mat on wooden floorboards, your pillow. It's a tiny block of wood. Yes, wood, supposedly better for posture. In reality, it's an ancient Japanese chiropractor's job security. You hear a rooster outside, not your alarm, just an actual rooster. And that means it's time for chores, sword practice, and maybe dying with honor if today gets weird. You wash your face with cold water from a wooden bucket. No sink, no faucet, no soap, just rice husks if you're lucky. You get dressed in your kimono and hakama. It's layered, stiff, and takes time, because if you're not properly dressed and someone challenges you to a duel, you might die unfashionably, which is worse than just dying, apparently. Breakfast? A humble bowl of rice, miso soup, maybe some pickled vegetables. Protein? Funny. Not unless your lord felt generous last harvest. Coffee? Never heard of it. You sip green tea instead, trying to convince yourself it's the same, but it's not. Outside, the air smells like morning. Dew, damp wood, the faintest whiff of horse manure, and the ash from last night's cooking fires. The village around the estate is already moving. Farmers calling to oxen, merchants setting up stalls, children chasing each other barefoot between carts. You are part of the warrior class, which means you rise early, look grim, and try not to smile too much. Smiling is for poets and drunk monks. Your katana hangs on the wall. Polished, sacred, slightly overcompensating. You strap it on carefully, right side up for now. Left side out means you're ready to draw, and unless you're itching to settle something with your neighbour over boundary lines, that's not the move for morning tea. As you step into the courtyard, a sparrow flutters away from a shallow stone basin. The water reflects your face, and for a second it surprises you. You look younger than you feel. There's a tightness in your brow, but also a softness that hasn't yet been carved out by loss. Not fully, anyway. A servant bows as he passes you. "Oh, hayo gozaimasu," he says. You nod back. "Oh, hayo." The estate is quiet, disciplined, and already in motion. Everything runs with the smooth rhythm of tradition until it doesn't. That's the secret of this life. Stability is an illusion. Even in peace, you live with one foot in war. You head toward the training grounds. There's a younger samurai already practicing. Probably trying to impress someone, or just nervous enough about being killed in his first battle to want his footwork perfect. You watch him for a while, noting the way his hips shift too much on each cut. He sees you and stops, bows deeply. "Sensei," he says. You're not his official teacher, but in a world where experience equals wisdom, anyone older than 30 is basically a walking scroll. You correct his stance with a gentle nudge to his shoulder and a sharper one to his ego. "Cut from here," you say, touching your own center, just below the ribs. "Not from your arms. Power comes from the ara, not the biceps." He nods, sweat already dripping down his face. You leave him to it. Today is the first day of the 7th month, which means you'll soon attend a memorial at the family shrine. It's Obon season, a time when the spirits of the ancestors return briefly to visit the living. The air feels heavier around this time, more watchful. Not ghostly, exactly, but intentional. You can feel the presence of those who came before, lingering just at the edge of things. Your family line, like most samurai families, stretches back generations. Or so you were told. There are scrolls with names, dates, battles. Some are probably embellished. Your grandfather used to tell stories of your great-great-uncle cleaving a Mongol raider clean in two during the invasions. Was that real? Maybe. Or maybe it was just the kind of story a young boy needs to believe in when he first holds a wooden sword. You remember sitting at the old man's feet while he smoked a pipe and spoke in his raspy baritone. Bushido is not just the way of the warrior, he once told you. It is the way of remembering, of honoring. You didn't understand what he meant then, now you're starting to. On the way back inside, you pass the Kamidana, the household's miniature Shinto shrine. You bow, clap twice, and offer a short prayer to the kami, not for luck, for clarity. Because if you are going to die this week, you'd like to at least understand why. Later in the day, you'll visit your daimyo, your lord, for instructions. Maybe he'll send you on patrol or to check in on a rebellious merchant. Maybe there'll be a letter to deliver or some dispute to mediate. Samurai aren't just warriors. You're also civil servants, enforcers, and sometimes glorified messengers. The sword isn't always for drawing. Sometimes it's just for reminding, but for now you pause on the porch. The sun has risen higher, the wood is warm beneath your feet. You take another sip of bitter green tea and stare out over the trees. Everything feels slow in this moment, deliberate, as if time itself bows before you. This too is part of the tradition, stillness, awareness, the silent spaces between actions. And then, like all moments, it ends. A voice calls your name. It's time to leave the quiet behind. Time to go out into the world again, to defend, to serve, to bear witness. You step off the porch, one hand resting on the hilt of your sword. The day has begun. To Chapter 2. You're standing outside the main hall of your lord's estate. A squat, wide building with thick wooden beams and white plaster walls, surrounded by a stone path swept so clean you'd feel guilty tracking dust across it. Before you step inside, you remove your sandals. You may carry a blade and be permitted to end someone's life with it under the right circumstances, but gods forbid you scuff the tatami. The interior is hushed, cool, smells faintly of cedar and incense. A pair of attendants nod at you as you pass, their eyes lowered. They've been here longer than you. They probably knew your father, maybe even your grandfather. They've seen daimyo come and go, retainers rise and fall, still they bow like you matter, because hierarchy is everything. You kneel in seiza just inside the threshold of the audience chamber. Your knees already hate you for it. Across the room, your daimyo sits elevated on a platform, not on a throne, just a finely lacquered box draped in silk. He is not young, but he is not soft. His beard is short and severe. His eyes are steady. Behind him, a screen painting shows tigers in the mountains. Symbolism, much. He regards you for a long moment. No one speaks first to the Lord. Finally he says, "There's been trouble in the North Quarter." You nod slightly. "Yes, my lord. A merchant's son insulted a constable. The constable retaliated. Now the merchant refuses to pay his taxes and the constable has vanished. It's all very embarrassing." His tone doesn't change, but the slight tightening around his jaw suggests that embarrassing might be a euphemism for heads are going to roll, and possibly literally. "I will investigate." "Do more than that," he says, voice clipped. "Settle it quietly." You bow deeply, palms pressed to the floor. "Yes, my lord." He dismisses you with a wave. Before you rise, you catch the faint rustle of silk, a whisper of motion from behind the screen. Someone else was listening, not uncommon. Lords always have extra ears, especially when they're expecting trouble. Back outside, you breathe more freely, not because you were afraid, not exactly, but because being in a room with someone who holds your life in his ledger tends to compress the lungs. You head for the stables. If you're to investigate this tax fiasco, you'll need your horse, or at least the family mule. Travel by foot would take hours. And besides, you're a samurai. You're supposed to show up on horseback, blade gleaming, as if you just rode in from a poem. The stablemaster greets you with a crooked grin. "Still pretending you're not too tall for that beast, eh? She pretends I'm not too heavy. We understand each other." You mount up and head for the North Quarter. Now let's talk about feudal politics for a second. Not the textbook stuff, not the wars, the banners, the names that end in Tomo or Yuki. Let's talk about the real layers, because this isn't some neat triangle of lord-peasant-warrior. This is a swirling soup of petty grievances, ancestral vendettas, and bureaucratic nightmares. Samurai like you. You're often the band-aid slapped over a festering wound. You're sent in to settle things with your presence, or failing that, your sword. You arrive at the North Quarter by late morning. The sun is beating down hard now. Summer in Japan doesn't play fair. The town smells like sweat, charcoal, and fermenting radish. You hitch your horse to a post outside the tax house and immediately spot the problem. A young man, rich by the looks of his robe, drunk by the angle he's leaning, is standing on a sake barrel, shouting at a crowd of mostly confused villagers. "They dishonored my family!" he yells, voice cracking with all the righteousness of someone who's never taken a punch. "My father paid for those roads. That constable should bow and beg." You sigh. You cut through the crowd, flash your family crest, and the villagers part like rice stalks before a storm. The young man doesn't recognize you immediately, which is honestly a gift. You reach up, grip the sake barrel, and flip it just hard enough to send him tumbling. The crowd gasps. He lands in the dirt with a very satisfying thud. You say, "will come with me." He starts to protest. You give him one look, not even a glare, just that neutral, "I have killed before and you're not even close to worth it" expression. He shuts up. Back at his family's home, a garish compound with too many gongs and not enough taste, you speak with his father, the merchant in question. He's calmer, apologetic even. "It's just that your son insulted a constable and now refuses to pay taxes. He's young. You are not." The merchant bows. "I will pay." You nod. "Good. Will he be punished?" "That depends on how quickly he shuts up." He shuts up. You don't find the constable until dusk. He's hiding in a storehouse behind the granary, nursing a bruised jaw and a bottle of plum wine. "I didn't mean to hit him that hard," he says, "but he called me a worm." You offer him your canteen. "You're not a worm." "Thanks." "You're a constable. You're supposed to know better." "Right." You help him up. The two of you walk the path back toward the village. Fireflies blink into being along the edge of the road. Somewhere nearby, a flute plays a plaintive tune. The night has begun to stretch its limbs. By the time you return to the estate, the sky is velvet and stars have stitched their old paths across it. You report in, kneeling once more before your lord. "It is resolved," you say. He doesn't ask how. He trusts you, or he's too tired to care. Outside, you let out a breath and stretch your back. The pain from the tatami mat has returned in full force, but there's something else. A calmness. You did your job. Tomorrow it might be a bandit, a duel, an uprising. Who knows? But for today, the peace holds. You walk toward your quarters under the moonlight, the path silver and silent, and somewhere behind you, history keeps breathing, through the rice paddies, the stories, the blood. Chapter 3. You make it back to the estate just as the sun's giving up, sinking behind the slanted rooftops and rice paddies like a candle dying in its own wax. The light changes here, golden, then indigo, and suddenly everything feels colder, quieter. The kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat in your ears. That's the cue. Your body, your sword, and your soul all need cleaning. You're filthy. Not dramatic, action movie filthy, just the honest grime of a day spent doing things that mattered. Dirt clings to your hakama. Your forearms are crusted in dried sweat and dust. You smell like horsehair, metal, and sun, and still you don't go straight to the bath. That would be selfish. First, you tend to your katana. You kneel, not dramatically, not in prayer, just with the practiced, deliberate calm that comes from knowing your sword is more than a weapon. It's your identity, and it must be respected. You unsheath it slowly, letting the soft whisper of steel sliding against lacquer fill the room. There's no music in the background, no montage, just this, oil, cloth, polish. You check for blood, even if you didn't spill any. Why? Because a dull edge dishonors both you and the forge that gave it life. You run a cloth over the blade in gentle, practiced strokes. Not too hard, not too soft. You clean it like it's alive, because in some ways it is. The cleaning ritual itself is a legacy, handed down from master to student like everything else. Polishing powder, oil, rice paper, a steady hand, generations of reverence in each swipe. Behind the blade there's a story. Tamahagane steel, smelted in Tatara furnaces, folded thousands of times, made by smiths who believed they weren't just forging weapons. They were capturing spirit. You weren't there for that part, but you carry it anyway. Every samurai does. Once your sword rests sheathed beside you, quiet, gleaming, full, then and only then do you head for the bathhouse. And when we say bath, don't picture a relaxing soak with candles and lo-fi beats. This is an ofuro. A squat wooden tub full of near-scalding water that smells faintly of cedar, but before you touch it, you scrub yourself outside the tub. That's the rule. Always clean before you soak. Dirt in the communal bath is basically a war crime. You use a bucket, cold water, you scrub with a rough cloth. There's no soap, just sand or ground-up rice husks again. They scratch your skin raw, but it's not about comfort. It's about order. Finally, you lower yourself into the hot water. It hits like fire, then relief, then stillness. This is your first moment of peace all day, and it's earned. You're not alone either. A few other samurai are in the bath with you. No one speaks. Silence here isn't awkward. It's respectful. You all just exist, quiet, breathing steam, listening to the water drip. You're all warriors, trained to kill, to serve, to endure. But for these few minutes, you're just bodies, soaking muscle and memory. You feel every inch of the day in your spine, your joints, your thighs, every wrong step, every parried blow, every breath. And in that silence, a question creeps in. Would you want to live like this every day? Because for them, this isn't an experience, it's existence, and the bath isn't indulgence. It's discipline, a chance to reset before the next duty, the next command, the next day. The stillness is part of the rhythm, and you're starting to feel it. After the bath, you dry off with a threadbare cloth that's barely larger than a napkin. You dress again, a fresh kimono this time. Simple, undyed, no clan insignia. You're done making statements for the day. Dinner waits, but not a feast, just more rice, a touch of pickled daikon, maybe a few slivers of dried fish. You eat slowly, kneeling again, because sitting cross-legged is for monks and drunkards. Across from you, an elder samurai chews in silence. His face is lined like a weathered scroll. He doesn't speak either, just nods, slow and deliberate. It's the kind of nod that says, today was enough, and for a samurai that's the highest praise. By the time the sun droops below the horizon, the estate glows in a soft amber hue. Candles flicker in paper lanterns, and everything starts to wind down except your legs, which are still on fire from all that kneeling and formal sitting. You consider standing just to rebel. Then you remember that rebelling isn't a great career move for a samurai unless you're ready to start a whole civil war about it. Dinner arrives on a lacquered tray. It's slightly more generous than breakfast, but not by much. More rice, more miso soup, maybe a sliver of grilled fish if you're lucky or high-ranking. No utensils, of course. You eat with chopsticks, perfectly aware that dropping one in front of your peers is a cultural faux pas that could haunt you for days. You sip green tea again because water is for commoners and sake is for celebrations or depression spirals. Afterward, there's a short period of social time, which mostly involves talking shop about swordsmiths, reciting poetry you secretly don't understand, and listening to that one guy who always manages to quote The Art of War like it's his personality. You sit politely, nodding at references to brush calligraphy, battle stances, and some weird new Buddhist parable someone picked up last month. It's a lot like networking today, except everyone here carries a katana. And you don't just carry your katana, you live by it. You are your sword. That's not a metaphor. The katana is the soul of the samurai. Lose it, and you might as well take up farming. Evenings are quiet, but not in a relaxing way. More like sit with your thoughts and reflect on your mortality, quiet, which, in fairness, is part of the training. Samurai didn't just master war, they studied death. Memento Mori wasn't a gothic Tumblr aesthetic for them. It was a lifestyle. You take a moment to walk the inner courtyard. The moonlight reflects off the raked gravel in the garden, the shadows cast by bonsai trees stretching thin and long across the ground like ink strokes from a master's brush. There's something surreal about how peaceful everything looks, like the same place that practiced disembowelment as a ritual could also invent Zen gardening. Your feet crunch softly as you walk, and you pause to take it all in. This isn't some movie set. This is the real deal. The world is slower, sharper. Everything has weight, words, gestures, even silence. Especially silence. A servant nods as they pass. You nod back. No words exchanged, but the ritual is clear. A lot of communication here runs on subtlety, not volume. It's not what you say, it's how long you wait before saying it and how gracefully you bow. By now your limbs are heavy, the kind of tired that seeps in when your day has been made up of rigid structure, constant discipline, and the low-level threat of random violence. You return to your room. It's minimalist because that's not a style. It's just what rooms look like. A tatami mat, a wooden stand for your sword, and a scroll painting that reminds you to be humble. Or something about a crane or a haiku. Honestly, you're too tired to decode it. Before sleeping, you perform your final duty. Sword maintenance. You kneel before your katana with reverence, like it's a sacred object, because it kind of is. You wipe the blade with soft rice paper, apply a whisper of oil to prevent rust, and return it to its sheath. Always edge up, never edge down, always angled, just so one slip and you risk cutting yourself or insulting centuries of tradition. Then finally you prepare to sleep. Your day started on a wooden pillow and it ends the same way. You lie down on the tatami mat again. Your back protests. Your knees crack like a tree splitting, but your mind, oddly clear. There's something about knowing your role, your duty, and your code, Bushido, that feels grounding, even if it's deeply exhausting. You close your eyes, and for a brief moment you think about how the samurai lived like this, not for one day, but for their entire lives. Bound by honor, shaped by centuries of war and peace, always aware that each morning could be their last. And yet, somehow they still found time to write love poems and invent the tea ceremony. You smile to yourself, just a little. Then the wooden pillow wins and you drift off to sleep. One day into the samurai life and already feeling like you've aged a decade. Tomorrow, you might wake up to a duel, a new command, or a political betrayal. But for now you sleep like a samurai. Chapter 4. You wake up for the second time in feudal Japan and your first thought is, why does my neck hate me? The wooden pillow has achieved its goal. Spinal alignment via mild torture. Your back aches like it spent the night doing backflips in armor. Your dreams were weirdly intense. Something about being chased by a tea master and a Zen monk who kept yelling in haiku. You're not sure what it means. Maybe you're finally assimilating. Outside, the rooster is back at it, proving again that punctuality was a farm animal's strong suit before iPhones took over. You stretch, groaning like a haunted house, and begin the same ritual as yesterday. Splash cold water on your face, mentally scream, dry off with a cloth that might as well be sandpaper. Still no soap, still no toothbrush. The breath situation, we're not talking about it. Once you're dressed, this time a bit quicker, thanks to muscle memory and mild terror, you head out to the estate's inner training yard. Today, you're not just training for honor or art. You're training because your entire career depends on being useful. And you're about to find out that usefulness isn't just measured by how fast you can decapitate a melon. See, depending on what era you've landed in, let's say late Edo period, circa 1700s, samurai aren't exclusively warriors anymore. There hasn't been an all-out war in over a century. Japan's relatively at peace, which means samurai have had to diversify. That's right. You might be a part-time tax collector, land steward, or regional accountant. The sword still matters. It's your badge of honor. But now, so does handwriting. So you better get used to brush calligraphy and grain reports. Before all that, though, comes the daily kenjutsu drills. You and a few other warriors kneel in rows on the packed earth. The sensei, older than time and somehow made entirely of tendon and authority, steps forward. You spend the next hour slicing through air like it owes you money. Controlled movements, perfect form. You're reminded that every cut has a name, a purpose. Mengiri, a vertical cut to the head. Dogiri, across the torso. You rehearse drawing your sword in a fluid snap of motion called yaijutsu, and hope you never have to do it in real life because someone will probably die, and it might be you. There's a moment when you glance over and see a younger samurai struggling with his stance. The sensei notices too. In the modern world, he'd probably get a stern look or some coaching. Here, he gets cracked across the knuckles with a bamboo rod and told to reflect on his ancestors' disappointment. Tough love hits different when it's generational. After training, you're sweating, your forearms throb, and your thighs feel like wet soba noodles. But you're proud. You didn't vomit, cry, or dislocate anything. That's a win. You wipe down your wooden practice sword and head toward your next duty, administrative tasks. Because remember, you're not just a sword guy. You're part of the elite bureaucratic machine that keeps your lord's domain running. Think of it like being a district manager with deadly weapons. You're assigned to the records hall, a long, airy room filled with scrolls, ledgers, and people who somehow make ink-stained fingers look intimidating. You sit cross-legged at a low desk, your job simple. Copy a land tax report using kanbon, a classical style of Chinese-inflected Japanese that makes modern calligraphy look like finger painting. You dip the brush, breathe, begin your strokes. Every mark matters. This is government documentation, not doodle time. And just to make things more exciting, mistakes are frowned upon, not because you'll be scolded, but because a mistake reflects poorly on your lord. And if you mess up too often, you might find yourself invited to commit seppuku. No pressure. Halfway through, you pause to stretch and observe the room. Other samurai scribes are hunched over their scrolls, and you realize that these warriors have adapted, like sharp blades turned into pens. It's not what you pictured when you imagined the samurai life, but it makes sense. In a world where peace reigns, the sword sleeps, and the ink flows, but don't be fooled, the code is still alive. Bushido, the way of the warrior, still governs every action: honor, loyalty, duty. Even if you're just tallying rice bushels, you're expected to do it with a warrior's heart. The noon bell rings, a deep wooden chime from the estate tower, and you're released for a meal. Lunch is predictably rice-based, some dried seaweed, a bit of pickled daikon that tastes like disappointment. You eat in silence, seated with others, each of you perfectly aware of your place in the hierarchy. You don't speak unless spoken to, you don't slouch, you definitely don't burp. You spot the Lord's retainers, eating separately under a shaded pavilion. They wear finer clothes, their meals served in stacked lacquered boxes. That's the dream, right? Rise high enough, be noble enough, and maybe you get 3 types of pickles and a fanboy to refill your tea. But with rank comes risk. The higher you climb, the closer you are to political infighting, rival clans, and the threat of being poisoned by your own cook. So maybe enjoy the daikon. Back at the records hall, your afternoon fades into more brushwork, more bureaucracy, and the occasional heated debate over whether a certain parcel of land should be taxed at 40 koku of rice or 35. That's right. You're now part of the thrilling world of Edo period local government. Eventually you're dismissed. The sun hangs lower in the sky now, and your hand feels like it's fused to your calligraphy brush. You step outside, exhale, and realize you haven't looked at the mountains once today. So you do. And they're majestic, tall ridges blanketed in deep green, a sky so blue it hurts. You remember suddenly that the samurai weren't just warriors and scribes, they were lovers of nature, poets, philosophers. Death could arrive at any moment, so they learned to notice everything. Even now, as a part-time desk jockey in Hakama, you feel it. The strange peace that comes from living fully inside your duty. And you've still got half the day left. As the afternoon stretches on, you start to feel the weight of your dual existence. The samurai were not just warriors, but administrators, philosophers, and quite often diplomats. But in this era, it's the sword that has the loudest voice. It's the one that demands respect, while the ink and quill are mere background noise. You spend another few hours copying records, lost in the rhythm of your brushstrokes. The work is tedious, but you start to see the beauty in it, the precise movements, the grace of each letter. It's a delicate balance between the past and the present, an embodiment of the samurai way. Eventually, a messenger arrives with urgent news. Your lord is holding an audience at the main hall and expects you to attend. You straighten, brush off the rice husks from your sleeve, and make your way to the meeting room. The air shifts as you enter, and for a moment you're reminded of the true weight of your role in this world. Your lord sits at the far end of a large tatami room, flanked by his retainers who stand like silent statues. The smell of incense lingers in the air, adding a layer of reverence to the proceedings. You bow deeply, acknowledging your position in the hierarchy before sitting at the low wooden table before your lord. His eyes scan you briefly, his expression unreadable, but there's a certain subtle power in his gaze. He's not just looking at you, he's measuring you, assessing whether you are worthy of the honor he bestows by allowing you into his inner circle. "Report," he demands, his voice low and commanding. Your heart skips a beat, but you stay composed. You know your job, you know your duty. You present the land tax reports, you explain the discrepancies in the grain assessments and suggest a solution, all the while keeping your posture rigid and your words measured. The conversation is a dance, and every step must be perfectly in sync with the unspoken rules of the room. Your lord listens with a thoughtful silence, nodding occasionally as you speak. There's little room for error in moments like this. If you fail here, you're not just dishonoring yourself, you're dishonoring your lord, your clan, and the very code you've sworn to uphold. "Good," he finally says, the word clipped and deliberate. You exhale, only realizing now how tightly you are holding your breath. You've done your job. The audience ends with a brief, almost imperceptible gesture, and you're dismissed. You rise, bow deeply, and step back into the cool evening air. The tension melts from your shoulders, but only for a moment. The job isn't over. There's always something more to do in the life of a samurai. As the sun sets and the world around you cools, you take a moment to step outside and breathe. The sky is painted in shades of orange and pink, a brief and fleeting beauty that reminds you of the delicate nature of life itself. The mountains stand in the distance, untouched and eternal, while you, a mere fleeting moment in time, stand in the midst of it all, doing your part. Night falls quickly in feudal Japan. The streets grow quiet, save for the soft murmur of people finishing their evening chores. You return to your quarters, your feet heavy with the weight of a day well lived, but not yet finished. You've learned much about what it means to be a samurai in this era, not just a warrior, but a servant, a protector, a pillar of society. Your role, while smaller than that of the great generals and shoguns, is vital nonetheless. But the day isn't over yet. There's still the matter of a final personal duty you must attend to before you can rest. The evening ritual of meditation awaits. You settle into a quiet room, the flickering candlelight casting shadows on the tatami mats. You sit cross-legged, your posture straight, your mind calm. This is the time for reflection. For a samurai, the day isn't truly over until you've had time to center yourself, to reflect on your actions, your thoughts, your honor. You close your eyes, letting the stillness of the room wash over you. The sound of your breathing becomes the only thing you can hear. You think of the day, the sword training, the bureaucracy, the report to your lord. Everything was done with care. Everything was done with honor. But as the meditation deepens, you begin to realize something. This day, this life, is a constant cycle. A samurai's purpose is never truly finished. There's always more to be done. The sword must always be sharp. The records must always be accurate. The mind must always be clear. When you finally rise, the candle has burned low and the night is deep. You feel a sense of peace, knowing that despite everything, you've done your duty. You've lived as a samurai for one full day. And though you'll never stop learning, never stop growing, you know this moment, this fleeting 24-hour span, has made you closer to understanding the true nature of your role. With one last bow to the quiet room, you turn off the light and make your way to bed. The wooden pillow still awaits. It will be another long night of rest that barely qualifies as rest. But that's the way of things in the samurai world. You live, you serve, you fight, and you sleep when you can, and maybe, just maybe, you'll do it all again tomorrow. Chapter 5. The evening slips into night, and the world around you grows quiet. It's the kind of silence that wraps itself around your thoughts, the kind that invites contemplation and, in equal measure, unease. As the moon rises, casting pale light across the quiet grounds of your lord's estate, you know that your duty is far from over. The day may be done, but there is still one more task to complete, the last watch. In the world of feudal Japan, a samurai's responsibilities extend beyond the battlefield and the boardroom. It's not just about the sword or the paperwork, it's about the security of the lord, the clan, and the community. The night watch, where you and a few others patrol the estate to ensure its safety, is a crucial part of that. You walk through the courtyard, your feet moving silently across the stone paths. The cool air nips at your skin, the weight of your armor slightly comforting in its familiarity. The katana rests at your side, its presence both reassuring and ominous. In the distance, the faint sound of crickets creates a soothing backdrop to the otherwise still night. The watch is mostly uneventful, silent, monotonous. You check the gates, examine the surrounding walls, and make sure the perimeter is secure. There's a tension in the air, a subtle reminder that peace is often fragile. While your lord's estate may be safe for now, there are always threats lurking, be it bandits, rival clans, or the shadow of internal strife. The night is a time for vigilance, for ensuring that all remains in balance. As you make your rounds, you pass by the stables. The horses are quiet, their breath visible in the cold night air. You pause for a moment, admiring their beauty and grace. There's something about horses that connects with the samurai ethos, a shared understanding of strength, loyalty, and grace under pressure. The bond between a samurai and his steed is often an unspoken one, but it's there, woven into the fabric of your existence. You feel a momentary sense of peace as you stand there watching the horses, allowing yourself a brief respite before continuing your patrol. The watch continues, and your thoughts drift. You think back to your training earlier in the day. The swordplay, the stances, the precise movements, every strike, every step must be executed with perfection. Your sword is an extension of your soul, a reflection of your honor. But what of your soul, your heart? What of the man behind the sword? The life of a samurai is often viewed through the lens of honor, duty, and strength. But beneath that, there's a human being, a person with hopes, fears, desires, and regrets. You wonder sometimes if your life is as predestined as it seems. Are you simply a tool for your lord's ambitions, or do you have a purpose beyond the sword? Your thoughts are interrupted by the distant sound of footsteps. Another guard is making his rounds, his silhouette emerging from the shadows. You wave a silent greeting, acknowledging him with a nod. He returns it, his face impassive as always. There's no need for words. The watch is a solitary task, one that requires no companionship. You're alone with your thoughts, your duty, and the night itself. As you continue walking the perimeter, the first signs of dawn begin to creep into the sky. The darkness of the night gives way to the pale light of morning, and the world around you begins to stir once again. The roosters crow in the distance, signaling the beginning of a new day. You pause for a moment, taking in the view of the rising sun. It's a beautiful sight, one that's easy to take for granted in the rush of daily life, but here, in this quiet moment, you allow yourself to appreciate it. The duty of the samurai never truly ends, but there's a sense of peace that comes with the dawn. The weight of the sword on your side, the weight of your responsibilities, all seem to shift in the light of the morning sun. The world is still fragile, still uncertain, but for now it feels just a little bit more balanced. As the sun continues to rise, you make your way back to your quarters. Your body aches from the day's training, the meditation and the watch. You long for rest, but you know that sleep is fleeting. You return to your quarters, remove your armor, and settle onto the tatami mat once more. The wooden pillow is waiting, as uncomfortable as ever, but you welcome the quiet. The day will begin again soon enough, but for now there is a brief moment of peace. You close your eyes, your mind still buzzing with the weight of your duties, but your body finally yielding to the exhaustion. As you drift off to sleep, you can't help but wonder, is this what it means to be a samurai? To serve, to protect, to live in constant vigilance, or is there something more to it, something deeper that you've yet to discover? The answer perhaps lies somewhere between the sword and the soul, and with that you surrender to sleep, knowing that tomorrow will bring a new set of challenges, a new cycle of duty, and the same fleeting moments of clarity. By the time you and Takeda return from patrol, the late afternoon sun is throwing long golden blades across the ground. The village smells like smoke and steamed rice. Kids chase each other through narrow dirt paths, barefoot and giggling, while old men squat at doorways sipping tea that might also be sake, judging by how red their noses are. You're sticky with sweat, dust clinging to your forearms, your armor straps itchy against your skin. You'd kill for a bath, but you're a samurai. Killing for comfort isn't quite the code. You remind yourself of Bushido, the way of the warrior, self-control, simplicity, honor. You don't just get to throw your swords in the corner and call it a day. No, first you kneel and clean them. Not because they're dirty, you didn't fight anyone, but because it's what you do. You draw your katana and wakizashi, lay them out with care. The oil you use to clean the blade is made from clove. It smells faintly medicinal. You polish them slowly, wiping along the curve of the blade, mindful not to slice your own fingers off while trying to look cool. Each sword is more than a weapon, it's your soul. Literally, that's not metaphor. In feudal Japan, a samurai's swords weren't just tools of war. They were an extension of identity, family legacy, sometimes even spiritual status. Some blades were passed down through generations, outliving their owners and the lords they served. Others had names, poetic ones like Cloudcutter or Moonwhisper. Yours doesn't have a name yet, but in the quiet of this moment you wonder what it would be. Stranger's Edge, maybe? Out of time? Still, you catch yourself smiling at the thought. You're getting used to this. When you're done, you store your swords in the rack. Edge up, hilts to the left, always. That way, if someone walks in and tries to grab your katana, they'll have to draw it in reverse, a deadly second too slow. Samurai life is full of these small ritualistic hacks. Every gesture is calculated, every habit centuries old. There's a kind of beauty in the rigidity. You're called to assist in a short training session with the local ashigaru, the foot soldiers. They're not born into privilege like you, well, you in this 24-hour body, but they make up most of the military force. You run drills together, marching in formation, quick draws, mock attacks. One young recruit nearly slices his own ear off during a practice strike. He's embarrassed. You give him a calm correction, the way you've seen Takeda do earlier. Slow is smooth, you say, echoing something you heard this morning, and smooth becomes fast. He nods. You think it lands. After, your lord's steward appears, summoning you for a short inspection. You kneel once again in the receiving room, back straight, hands resting on your thighs. Your lord doesn't speak much. He nods as the steward recounts your patrol and conduct. You bow. You don't speak unless spoken to. Your armor creaks faintly as you rise, muscles stiff from a long day. The sun is slipping behind the hills now, casting the courtyard in a warm, dim light. Temple bells toll in the distance, and not because it's a holy day, but because time is marked this way here. Bells, roosters, sun, there's no clock ticking on your wrist. Time is something you feel. You return to your quarters for the final stretch of the evening. Someone has left a meal for you. This one feels slightly more generous. A grilled sardine, some soft tofu, radish pickles, barley rice. You eat it slowly, cross-legged, watching the silhouettes of guards patrolling the walls, and that's when it hits you. How alive this all feels. How grounded. There's no phone, no messages, no blaring headlines, just the rhythm of a world that runs on discipline, ritual, and a kind of quiet dignity. You remember something from earlier, the priest's voice during the funeral. To live as a warrior is not only to fight, it is to serve, to protect, to endure. It lingers with you now more than the clanging swords or the heavy armor. The idea that being a samurai was not just about killing or dying honorably, but about living honorably, which honestly might be harder. There's a knock, Takeda again. He leans in through the doorway. "Night patrol," he says. "Join me! One last time?" You hesitate, then nod. Maybe one more round beneath the stars won't hurt. Together you circle the walls, lantern in hand, fireflies flitting above the rice fields. The air is cooler now, cicadas soft in the distance. You don't talk much, you don't have to. Afterward you bow good night, you return to your room, you strip off the hakama, fold your layers neatly, no Netflix, no scrolling, just you, a wooden block pillow, and a heart full of stories. You blow out the lantern, your body sinks into the mat, which, to your surprise, feels just a little more comfortable now. Or maybe it's you who's changed, and just before your eyes close, you realize you didn't just live like a samurai for 24 hours. You were one. Chapter 6. You wake up again. Not literally, but somewhere in the back of your mind there's a shift, a flicker of awareness. Maybe it's the post-dinner quiet, or maybe it's that you're finally slowing down enough to hear your own thoughts, unfiltered. The world outside your door is alive with muted sounds, crickets, distant conversations, the occasional clang of metal as a guard adjusts his armor. Inside, the glow of the paper lantern casts soft shadows against the shoji screens. Your body aches, but it's a satisfying ache, the kind that reminds you that today was real. Your arms still hum faintly from the training, your legs from the patrol. You sit cross-legged on the floor and reach for the small calligraphy kit left beside your bedding. Yes, even samurai were expected to know how to write. Brush, ink, thought, precision. It's not so different from wielding a sword, just quieter, less blood. You grind the ink stick against the stone. It's a slow, meditative task. Time softens. You dip the brush and begin to write. The first word is honor. You pause. What did that mean when you first woke up? Obedience, blind loyalty, sword fights. But today redefined that. Honor looked like helping a young Ashigaru correct his stance. It looked like patience during a funeral, like silence when your lord walked by, like tying your armor properly, even if no one would see it but you. You write more words: service, discipline, death, life. The ink bleeds a little too much. You adjust your grip. A few hundred years ago, in this very era, the samurai class began evolving. They weren't always warriors. At first, they were estate managers, minor officials who protected their employers' property. But the centuries sharpened them into soldiers, generals, warlords, and then the centuries softened them again. Sword became symbol. War gave way to peace. By the Edo period, a samurai might go years without drawing his weapon, but he would still rise each morning to bow, to serve, to write, because the code remained even when the bloodshed didn't. You find comfort in that. The thought that identity isn't always in action, but in intention. A samurai who hasn't fought is no less samurai than one who has, as long as he lives with purpose, with structure. You look at the ink now dry on the paper. It's messy. You're no calligrapher. But the words feel honest. You tuck the paper away. Outside, someone laughs. Not a warrior's laugh, a father maybe, or a drunk farmer. It reminds you that while samurai walk with swords and codes, life continues all around them in simpler rhythms. Love, farming, births, gossip. And in the quiet, you wonder about the samurai's loneliness, the constant pressure to be more than human, to live up to impossible ideals, to never falter, never hesitate, never cry. You remember Takeda's pause earlier, how he looked out over the hills like he was searching for something. Maybe being a samurai isn't about strength. Maybe it's about enduring. You lie back. The wooden pillow welcomes you now, strange as that is. Your fingers smell faintly of ink. Your sword rests within arm's reach. You close your eyes, let go, 1 more hour to go, and then home. Or maybe not. Maybe you'll stay in this story just a little longer. As you follow the procession out of the temple, you can't help but notice the way night bleeds slowly into the horizon, dark ink blotting out the last of the orange sky. Evening in feudal Japan doesn't come with much fanfare. No buzzing streetlights, no headlights streaking down asphalt roads. Just cicadas, frogs, and the occasional hush of bamboo brushing against itself in the breeze. You're walking beside one of the junior retainers, probably 15 years old, maybe younger, but already strapped with a short wakizashi and carrying himself like he has something to prove. He glances at you sideways, clearly curious, but too respectful to speak without invitation. You remember that in this era, age and rank dictate every interaction. Speak too casually and you dishonor your superior. Speak too formally to a peer and you look like you're mocking them. It's like living inside a never-ending social puzzle. One wrong move and you're not just rude, you're potentially dead. To break the silence, you ask his name. Kenta, he answers after a pause with a quick bow of his head. You ask if he's nervous for the campaign. His reply is short, automatic. A samurai must face death with serenity. Translation: Yes, but I'm trying not to show it. Back at the castle compound, torches have been lit along the walls. Guards pace slowly along the perimeter, Naginata resting on their shoulders, eyes scanning the distance. The whole place smells of pine smoke, iron and something else. Anticipation. You step into the main hall where a strategy session is in progress. It's dim, lit by oil lamps that throw shadows across a map made of parchment and stones. The daimyo is there, seated at the head of the room like a still mountain. His voice is calm, but when he speaks, everyone listens like the earth itself is shifting. The target, a border village that has reportedly been sheltering Ronin aligned with a rival clan. It's not a full-scale war yet, but it's a political message wrapped in a sword stroke. The mission is simple. Deliver the message and make it loud enough that the other lord gets the hint. You're assigned to the vanguard, which in any other job might sound exciting. In this one, it's more like being first in line for a meat grinder. After the meeting, you're dismissed for the night. There's no Netflix, no scrolling through social media, no just one more episode. Instead, you sharpen your blade. Slow, methodical strokes across a whetstone. You check the lacing on your armor. You kneel in front of your sword in quiet reflection, because tomorrow might be your last day on Earth, and in the code you live by, you're supposed to be ready for that, not in a bucket list kind of way, more like making peace with it. Bushido, the way of the warrior, isn't about winning, it's about meeting death on your own terms with dignity. It's part philosophical code, part coping mechanism. You sip a final cup of tea and step outside. The stars above you are piercing, undisturbed by city glow. The moon casts silver on the gravel paths, and for a moment the world feels still. You feel the weight of centuries pressing in, of men and women who lived and died beneath this same sky, under the same obligations, the same impossible ideals. You make your way to the sleeping quarters, a long wooden barracks that smells faintly of sweat, tatami, and cedar oil. The other samurai are already lying down in their respective places, arranged by rank. You find yours near the far end. Again, there's that wooden pillow. You lie down and stare at the ceiling. Just beams and darkness. No lullabies, no podcasts, no meditative app whispering affirmations. Just the sound of your own breathing and the echo of your ancestors. Tomorrow, blades will cross. Tomorrow, the idea of honor might demand blood. But for now, in this rare moment between the chaos of duty and the silence of sleep, you simply exist. And for a samurai in feudal Japan, that might be the most peaceful thing you get. Chapter 7. Darkness has settled fully now. The kind of darkness that doesn't negotiate. In feudal Japan, night isn't diluted by neon or interrupted by the hum of modern life. It falls hard and total, lit only by flickering oil lamps and the scattered pinpricks of stars. And once it arrives, the whole world shifts. It grows smaller, quieter. Every sound is amplified, the creak of a floorboard, the rustle of silk, the low whistle of wind moving through bamboo slats. You lie still on your mat. At first, sleep doesn't come, not because of the wooden pillow, although that still feels like resting your head on a brick of regret. No, you're awake because your mind is racing. You've survived a full day in the skin of a samurai, and now, in the quiet hush of night, the weight of it all begins to settle in. Today wasn't just about swords and rice, it was about structure, hierarchy, an entire society balanced on a blade's edge. Every gesture, every word, every breath had meaning. You had to consider your lord, your ancestors, your enemies, your posture. And that's not exhausting in a dramatic Hollywood battle kind of way. It's exhausting in a soul-deep, I can't even sneeze wrong kind of way. And still, there was beauty in it. A stark, disciplined kind of beauty. You remember how the sword felt in your hands, an extension of you, not just a weapon but a statement. You remember the garden path before dawn, raked stones and morning mist, how even the wind seemed deliberate. The formality of it all gave the world shape, like invisible rails guiding every motion. Outside, someone is walking the grounds, a night guard doing slow laps around the perimeter. You hear his armor clinking softly with every step, like distant wind chimes made of steel. Somewhere a monk chants a verse in low, steady rhythm. It blends into the night, both foreign and familiar. And you realize something else. The samurai didn't live in constant war. They lived in constant readiness. You've read the stories, of course, the epic battles, the dramatic betrayals, the legendary duels in the rain. But for every clash of swords, there were 100 mornings of tea, of paperwork, of land disputes and rice taxes. The sword was not always for killing. Often it was for reminding others who you were, reminding yourself who you needed to be. You think about death. Not in a fearful way, but in the way you've been taught to today, as something to befriend, to accept. The samurai were trained to meditate on it daily, not to rush toward it, but to strip it of its power, to live so completely in each moment that when death came, it would find nothing left unexpressed. That's a tall order. Lying here, you wonder if you've earned the title, even for a day. Did you act with honor? Did you meet your duties? Were you composed, loyal, aware? You're not sure. You stumbled. You questioned things. You were confused, but then again, maybe that's part of it too. Because here's the quiet truth. Samurai weren't perfect. They weren't all stoic statues with flawless sword strikes. They were human, flawed, conflicted, often torn between what they wanted and what the code demanded. And yet, they tried. In that way, the samurai weren't so different from us. They just had stricter clothing. You turn slightly on your mat, careful not to make too much noise. Your side aches from training. Your arms feel like sandbags, but your mind is full. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise, another bowl of rice, another lesson in restraint or risk or ritual. If you lived here, truly lived here, this would be your rhythm. Wake, serve, train, protect, reflect, repeat. You'd grow older under that discipline. You'd learn to treasure the sound of rain on a temple roof, or the warmth of a single cup of tea. But tonight you are just passing through, a visitor borrowing time, and the day, like a blade after battle, now slides into its sheath. Your eyes grow heavier. The guard's footsteps fade into the distance. The monk's chant quiets to silence. Somewhere a pine tree creaks in the wind, and the tatami beneath you shifts gently as someone turns in their sleep. You breathe in, deep, slow, full of wood smoke and earth, and you let go. You close your eyes. Congratulations, you just lived like a samurai for 24 hours. Sleep well, tomorrow the code begins again.